graduated from Providence in 2011 with a BA in psychology. After working in the mental health field for a few years, he realized his true passion was in hospitality and moved to Washington, D.C. to learn the craft. In his time in the restaurant industry, he led multiple beverage programs for multiple Top Chef alumni and finished out his time behind the stick as the bar manager for Kinship and Meteor, two adjoined Michelin-starred restaurants. After revitalizing their program, Zach moved to Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife and became a consultant for Johnson Brothers Distributing, one of the top wine and beer distributors in the country. So Josh helped us out way back when the pandemic first started with one of his tequila master classes, which we all greatly enjoyed. And I'd like to welcome him back tonight for our fall cocktail class. It's a nice and dark and stormy evening. I hope some of you made your dark and stormy drink to get ready for tonight. And thanks, Zach, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It is absolutely incredible to see so many familiar faces coming up. You guys could be anywhere in your house that you wanted to tonight. You could be watching any streaming service you wanted to, but you chose to be here and enjoy some great cocktails with me. So let us begin. So I know that Sarah had passed along the introduction and a cocktail recipe. And for those of you who have not had a chance to do it yet, I wanted to show it off real quick, and we're going to be doing a play on a Dark and Stormy. So Dark and Stormy is considered a classic rum cocktail. That is one of the few cocktails that you actually have to use a very specific liquor in order to actually call it a Dark and Stormy. So Dark and Stormy, you start off typically with a ½ ounce of lime juice. We're going to start off with lemon for fall. On top of that, we take some apple cider. Add about 2 ounces of that. Top it off with ginger beer. And then finish it off with 1.5 ounces or 2 ounces of rum, depending on how your day has been. And what's a lot of fun about this cocktail is the presentation. Gosling's rum is actually, like most liquor, it is actually lighter than most mixers. So you get this beautiful little color gradient here where the rum just kind of sits on top. You add a little bit of cinnamon or a bit of fresh apple to it, and you have a beautiful cocktail. Now, part of the reason I wanted to do this drink is because Dark and Stormy is basically the time of year. The other reason is as an homage to New England. Rum is actually considered the spirit of New England. During the transatlantic trade, unrefined sugars coming from the islands would take a stop at ports in and around Providence and Boston, and distillers took advantage of the raw material and created rum, which quickly became the seafarer's drink of choice. So cheers, y'all, and thank you so much for joining. Now, obviously, we now have a very big jug of apple cider that would go bad if we had nothing to do with it. And since we're going into the holidays where hopefully you all get a chance to celebrate with friends and family where appropriate, we're going to make a quick mulled apple cider as a nice way to kind of act as a either a welcome drink or just something to enjoy as it gets cold. Now, for this, you can make it in a pot. You can make it in a crock pot, is what I usually do. You're going to take the peel of lemon and orange, just cut it down like so. Try to get rid of as much of the white part, what we call the pith, as possible. The pith contains a lot of bitter components, so you don't want to have that in there. You add a little bit of bay leaf. You add a little bit of those cinnamon sticks that you bought once and you've never used again. A little bit of clove, allspice, and a little bit of black and white pepper. You're going to take that. Actually, my apologies. You're going to put the bay leaf and the lemon and orange peels into the crock pot. You take your spices, put them into a very small pan, and quickly, hopefully y'all can hear me, put it over flame. By heating up the spices, you're actually going to basically pull out the essential oils within those spices. You're going to waken them up, you're going to liven them up, and they really bring a lot more to the drinks. So real quick, we get it just to get a little bit of heat on it. And before things start to smoke, you just put it right in there. Finish off by pouring in your apple cider. Hopefully not make a huge mess of the kitchen. Set it to warm. And in about a half hour, or in 10 minutes, if you set it on high, you have a fantastic cocktail ready to go. All you have to do is add your spirit of choice after you pull the apple cider out of the crock pot. As a note, do not put alcohol in the crock pot. The alcohol will reduce very quickly and it will not taste good. But this is tasting delicious. So from there, let's say you don't like apples. One of my favorite things to do is to take a look at a book that I recommend that if all of y'all are trying to make drinks at home or trying to cook at home and you've never done it and you're trying to think of things to do, look for the Flavor Bible on Amazon or at your favorite local bookstore. It's basically take a group of chefs from around the world, some huge names, Thomas Keller, Jose Andres. They basically all got together and had a little powwow where you would bring up, words like fall, like spicy, or just individual ingredients like dill or pepper, and they went around and they talked about what flavors would pair really well with that. So if you ever wondered, oh God, I've got, celery root in the fridge and I have no idea what to do with it, this book has been an absolute perfect thing for me. So one of the things that's forgotten a lot in the fall is pomegranate. Pomegranate is actually a fall fruit going into winter. I'm sure everybody remembers from Civ, the story in Greek mythology, the story of Persephone going down to Hades and eating that one pomegranate seed, not allowed to leave Hades ever again. That is what I remember from Civ. So we are going to pay homage to that with a pomegranate cocktail. You're going to start here. Put 2 ounces of pomegranate juice. I usually use Pom. If you want to get your own pomegranate, de-seed it, and juice it yourself, please by all means do so. Just know that it is a very painfully tedious thing to do, and I would not wish that on my worst enemy. But along with that, you add 1.5 ounces of vodka. I'm going to be using Tito's tonight because it has a nice little bit of sweetness to it. Again, take your lemon juice, about 3/4 ounce there. And then about 1/2 ounce of honey. Honey has this really nice floral aroma that goes fantastically with that really acidic note in the pomegranate. And from there, we do the most exercise I have done in 6 months, which is to shake the drink. Now, if you don't have this at home, it's totally fine. You can do a method called boxing, where basically you take 2 pint glasses or 2 glasses and you move the drink back and forth until you have the drink cold enough to where you want it to be. But if you want your own cocktail shaker, when you seal the cocktail up, you want to give it a hit to make sure that the cocktail shaker seals. It actually gets cold enough that the metal will hook onto itself, and you can basically hold it upside down. It's not going to go anywhere. Real quick shake to it. Don't forget the best part in the bottom. And you do a double strain. The first strain is to hold back the big ice cubes. That second strain, using the tea strainer right here, is to get any sort of, there's fruit pulp, if there are things that you've muddled in there, and most importantly, little ice chips that will start to melt your drink down over time. You get that out, and all you have left is a beautiful and antioxidant heavy pomegranate cocktail.
Zach, that looks delicious. We do have one quick question back on the dark and stormy. Can the dark and stormy be made in batches without losing the greatness of making them by the individual glass?
Definitely. Batching is always fantastic when you are hosting. The only recommendation I would give if you're looking to batch a cocktail is to do two things. So maybe more than one recommendation. The first is if you are going to be doing batching and it has an ingredient like soda, like ginger beer in there that has effervescence, always add that last right before you're about to serve, because it is going to lose its carbonation over time. The second thing that I would recommend is if you are doing batch cocktails that aren't over ice, let's say if you're doing like a punch bowl and you add in the ice at the last moment, always add a little bit of water to help dilute the drink, because it will come through very, very strong. If you've ever been to a restaurant that has cocktails on draft, that's one of the keys to doing a cocktail on draft, is that whenever you're putting everything together, about 1/4 of that recipe, when you're batching it together, is water, to make up for the fact that you were not shaking or stirring that drink, you're just pouring it straight from a tap. I hope that answers.
Great, thank you. We also have a hand raised from Peyton. Peyton, do you have a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Zach, we were wondering, is there a way to, because the way we poured it, kind of the rum got saturated on the top. I don't want to break the color differential, but can we stir it, or is there not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely do that. If you have a spoon, go for it. If you have the straw, go for it. It's just, honestly, it's just a trick to make it look really cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Zach, similar to what we did for the tequila masterclass, are you willing to share your recipes so I can distribute them to our participants after tonight's session?
Yeah, actually, super cool. A really funny thing that you brought that up real quick. Just because I'm a nerd and I read about this, apparently there was a court case recently where some bartender brought it legally that you're not allowed to share you're not allowed to steal cocktail recipes. Never listen to that. Every bartender's dream is for somebody else to want to make their drink.
Great. And really quickly, do you mind just reviewing what the pomegranate drink recipe, what you included in that?
Absolutely. So, like I said, I usually, if I'm wanting to do something with pomegranate, I'm going to use POM. It's available at most grocery stores. It is basically just straight concentrated pomegranate juice. And it makes life a lot easier. If you have ever had to pull a pomegranate apart, it is absolutely miserable to do so. And this just makes life a lot easier. From there, I add in vodka just to kind of do a neutral flavoring to it. But you can add in whatever you want. If you want to continue with the rum, add the rum. If you want to do bourbon, it will go beautifully with that. Maybe not gin, but everything else is fair game. And then about 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lemon juice, and then a 1/2 ounce of honey. And again, wherever you find the honey is perfect.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. So next up, we've done a couple drinks that are super light and super refreshing, but I think it's just as important to do a drink that we all could use these days, which is a very strong one. And we are going to do a classic drink called a Sazerac. Now, if you've ever been to New Orleans, you know the Sazerac well. It is the cocktail of the city because it originated there. In fact, the name cocktail is considered possibly to be coming from the glass, the cockatiel, that the Sazerac was originally served in. Now, the Sazerac reckons back to a doctor living in the French Quarter at that time who created a tonic called Peychaud's. Peychaud's was at the time in the 1800s considered a way to actually cure disease. And the doctor would prescribe it to his patients. However, it is not great to drink on its own, so he decided to come up with a cocktail to go around it. And that turned into the Sazerac. Sazerac, you have your glass, and you take your Peychaud bitters, and you add about 2 glasses in there into a mixing glass. From there, you're going to take a simple syrup and add about ½ an ounce. Now you'll notice the simple syrup is a little bit darker. I'm using an unrefined. Did I get muted there somehow? Are we good? Can y'all hear me now? Okay, sorry. So we're using Demerara sugar in the raw. And then you are going to use rye. Tonight I am using Dave Finney's Burning Lips. And you're going to do about 2.5 ounces of rye in there. Now, as everybody knows, when you're going to New Orleans, you cannot walk down the streets of New Orleans without seeing an absinthe bar. And we're going to add a little bit of an absinthe rinse to this drink. Now you notice I'm actually using Pernod tonight. Pernod is what you call an anisette, which is just an anise flavored liquor. And why I'm using that tonight is because instead of buying straight absinthe, which is a little too expensive for me these days, the Pernod will do just fine for half the price and is also a main cocktail or a main ingredient in a lot of French cooking. So it has dual purposes of both being a fantastic drink and also great in food. So you've poured a little bit of your absinthe or a little bit of your Pernod into the drink that you're going to drink out of, and then you're going to coat the drink around. You pour the rest of it out, and you stir your drink. Now, again, you do not need fancy equipment for this. Any pint glass will do, any spoon will do. You just do a quick stir. The key to stirring is literally taking your middle finger and your ring finger and just bouncing them back and forth while your index finger and your thumb hold the spoon. And over time, you'll start to feel the glass get a little cold. And once you start to see a little bit of condensation forming on the glass, you know you're ready to go. Usually that doesn't happen. You finish off with a little expression from a lemon peel just to give a little oil to the top. Wrap it together to keep that pith separated from the alcohol. And you have a Sazerac. It tastes pretty darn good. Any questions on that drink? I know I'm going a little fast tonight.
Zach, we don't have a question yet about that drink. But back to the mulled cider recipe. Did you add any Baileys to the mulled cider, or I guess could you?
Oh, you absolutely can add Baileys to that. That actually brings up a fantastic point, and thank you for bringing that up. When it comes to adding Baileys to drinks, always a fantastic way to do it. If you're making something at home, though, make sure that you are not adding Baileys to anything that has citrus juice in it. Citrus oil, like with that orange and lemon peel, perfectly fine. But if you add it to citrus juice, that will curdle the Baileys. Yeah, so please do not do that. It does not taste good.
We do have another question. What does Sazerac mean?
Sazerac. What does Sazerac mean? Oh my goodness. I used to know that one. That, if I remember correctly, is from Creole, coming from New Orleans, but I will have to remind myself or to confirm to myself, and I will send out an email with that.
And one more question. Can you substitute Sambuca for the Pernod or Absinthe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sambuca will similarly fall under that kind of category of an anisette and will have a really similar flavor.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait.
Yep, no, they got it perfectly. Yep, they got it perfectly. The classic way a Sazerac is done is with French brandy, with cognac. It did get transferred into rye in the early 1900s because rye was the most prevalent liquor at the time, and we did not buy too much from the French. Thank you for the assist on that, Blake. Well, since I'm going a little fast, I had a cocktail up my sleeve that is a fun one and one that I have not tried to make in a very long time. So we are going to learn together to see if I can still do this. Give me 1 second. All right, so we've been stuck in the house for a very long time. We have not been able to go to a gym in months. For myself, years. But you still need a way to work out, and when you work out, you need protein. So what better way to get a little bit of protein in life than to have a raw egg in a drink? And in the fall is the perfect time to do that. So we are going to make a drink called the New York Sour. I'm just going to clean this out real quick, because everything needs to be perfect. So, egg white drinks. Very scary. I know they can be intimidating at times. Thing I will tell you is that, yes, raw eggs contain salmonella, but this is also going to be bathed in fruit juice and in alcohol for a few minutes, and nothing is getting through that. So when you are starting to make an egg white drink, you separate the egg white from the yolk just by taking that yolk and bouncing it back and forth between the shells. You got it? You throw that right in there. Take a little bit of fresh lemon. Now, each half of a lemon usually contains about 1/2 to a 3/4 ounce of fresh juice. So that is my usual kind of guide there. And then same amount of simple syrup. So 3/4 to 3/4. Now, a New York Sour, instead of using rye, you are going to use bourbon. And tonight we're using Breckenridge, coming to us out of Colorado. Breckenridge adds a really nice banana and clove note. And everything is in there. So now, the difficult part is that you have to do 2 shakes. You start with what you refer to as the ice shake, just like you usually do. Back real quick. And you strain it right back into the glass, or excuse me, into the shaker. The ice is gone, and you go into what is referred to as the dry shake. Now, the drink is perfect as it is right now. It is nice and cold, it's mixed together. The only purpose of the dry shake is to activate the egg whites. And that takes a little bit of time. Again, served up. And you'll see that foam start to separate. Now, as this drink exists right now, this is just a typical old-fashioned whiskey sour. A New York sour gets a little something extra. You take a 1/2 ounce of wine, red wine, does not matter what you have. And you just float it right on top. And you get this beautiful 3-layer to it of your egg white at the top, red wine in the middle, and then beautiful bourbon at the bottom. And that is a New York sour.
That looks great. I think you already answered Jessie's question. She says that she loves egg white cocktails, and is this a variation of the traditional whiskey sour, which you did answer yes.
Exactly. Now, the only big difference between a New York sour and the whiskey sour is obviously instead of using bitters at the top, you're using the red wine. And the reason you do that is not only for flavor and for presentation's sake, it's also to mask the fact that after a few minutes, you will begin to smell the egg coming from the egg whites. If you were to take a smell of this drink later on, if I had not put anything on top, you're going to get a good whiff of raw egg on there.
Another question is, have you ever used the liquid from cooked chickpeas to replace the egg whites in cocktails?
I have not done so myself, but I do know of vegan bars who do so. It is a fantastic way to replicate this cocktail, or any cocktail with egg whites for that matter.
Do you mind talking to us a little bit about the glassware that you select for each of these cocktails, and does that change the taste of the drink by using, you know, different glassware?
It absolutely does. So the first drink that we were doing, the Dark and Stormy, this is what we refer to as a Collins glass. A Collins glass is named obviously for the drink that Tom Collins, and is basically the go-to for any drink of blank and blank, vodka and soda, gin and tonic. It is the perfect way to enjoy the drink because of the narrow opening at the top, and also that the fact that you have an incredibly large base at the bottom. Most people are going to hold the drink by this way, and it basically avoids dilution over time. In short, the small base, or excuse me, the small opening at the top actually helps to contain the effervescence. Like if you've ever gone to a fancy restaurant and you see, oh my God, I'm out of breath from shaking the damn cocktail. If you've ever gone to a fancy restaurant and you get a glass of champagne, you'll notice recently that a lot of places are actually, instead of using those flutes, they're switching to regular wine glasses. And that is because while the flutes hold in the effervescence, they hold in the carbonation, they also dilute the flavor, because you can't really get your face in there to actually smell the wine or smell the drink. And as we've learned in over time, smell is actually 75% of your taste. Now, when we talk about rocks drinks, anything on the rocks would go in what we would refer to as a rock glass. Again, low base, but also a lot larger opening, which allows you to really pull in the complexities of what you're drinking on the rocks. Bourbon, rye, cognac, Amaro, all that kind of stuff goes a lot better when you can get the full profile to it. And then when you're drinking out of a coupe, this is for something that's high proof, because again, you want to avoid the dilution and you want to avoid warming up the glass. And also, it's just very pretty. The coupe hails back to, it goes back to Henry VIII. It would go back to the French Revolution. Marie Antoinette is considered to have been the one who came up with the coupe and gave it to her husband as a birthday present. Originally, it was used as a way to drink champagne, but they found over time that the opening is too large and therefore the champagne would fly almost immediately, and that's why she was guillotined. I'm kidding.
All right. Zach, we have a couple of different questions just about some of the ingredients that you used in the cocktails tonight. Do you
Absolutely.
mind, not without remaking them all again, do you mind just doing a refresh of what you used in each of the cocktails that you made for us this evening?
Of course. So, Dark and Stormy is the first cocktail we made tonight. You start off with your lemon juice, your Gosling ginger beer, adding in a little bit of apple cider, and topping it off with Gosling's dark rum. And then, as I said before, you can, now in order to make it a true Dark and Stormy, you do have to use Gosling's. Gosling's has one of the few trademarks on a cocktail to the fact that if you were to call something a Dark and Stormy, you have to use Gosling's. But you can put whatever the heck you want into a Dark and Stormy when it comes to rum. If you have Morgan around, go for it. If you have cachaça, if you have rum barbancourt, just as long as it's rum and as long as it's got a little bit of extra push to stand up to the ginger beer, you're good to go. Now, when we talk about the pomegranate martini, obviously we have the fresh pomegranate juice or the bottled pom, whatever you get your hands on, vodka, or just whatever your favorite spirit is. Again, fresh lemon juice and honey. For the Sazerac, the most important ingredient, of course, is the Peychaud's bitters. It is the whole reason that the cocktail exists, because without it, it would probably just be an old-fashioned. You have your rye or your cognac, depending on what you're in the mood for and what your price point is, Pernod or Absinthe, and again, just a little bit of simple syrup. And for the New York sour, simple syrup, lemon, usually bourbon, and then red wine.
Awesome, thank you. We have a bunch of questions that came in as you were reviewing. When it comes to the vodka drinks, like the Pom vodka drink, can you use a flavored vodka like red grapefruit?
Absolutely, yeah. Honestly, that is the fun of vodka, is that it is so versatile. Originally vodka was built as a neutral grain spirit. It was not supposed to taste like anything. And then when we started to add essences of fruit, that's when the craft cocktail movement kind of really took off. And please have fun with it, see what works. If it's delicious, you've come up with your own house cocktail. If it's not, still a drink.
Great. Deb says, I don't like to drink from a traditional margarita glass. Am I missing part of the experience by drinking margaritas from a Tom Collins type glass?
No, not at all. In fact, if you don't want salt or if you don't want sugar in your margarita glass, doesn't matter. The classic margarita is just, the only thing you need is the triple sec, the lime, and the tequila. That is in and of its essence exactly what the original bartender intended to make back in, I think it was 1923. But yeah, it's not so much about the glassware with that kind of drink. It's really, the only time a Tom Collins glass is really important is when you're using it for something with soda. And the only time a rocks glass is super important is when you're drinking something with no ice. But beyond that, drink what you would like to drink and how you'd like to drink it.
Excellent. Stephen is asking, do you have any other favorite bourbon or rye fall cocktails?
I absolutely do. Let me see if I still have this in my fridge. I'm gonna hold that for later. I might try to do something with that. Unfortunately, I don't have what I'm usually looking for, but another fantastic cocktail for the fall using bourbon or rye is a drink called a Boulevardier. So Boulevardier is quite literally, if you've ever had a Negroni, it is the exact same drink, except you are substituting bourbon or rye for the gin. So it's going to be your equal parts bourbon, Campari, and sweet vermouth. You just stir it up like you would do a traditional Negroni, serve it however you like, and finish it off with an orange peel. Another drink that I would recommend, I and you put me on the spot there, would be a champagne cocktail. Champagne cocktail, super classic style drink. You just put a sugar cube into a whatever wine glass you have available, a couple dashes of Angostura bitters, your classic old-fashioned bitters. You add in a little bit of rye or bourbon and top it off with whatever sparkling wine that you have with you. Super refreshing, light, but still kind of warms up the soul a little bit.
Excellent. One of my favorites is Aperol. I'm assuming that could you substitute Aperol for the one you spoke of that has Campari in it?
Absolutely. The only difference, so Aperol and Campari both exist in a category of liquors called Amaro. Amaro are Italian liqueurs based on bitter spirit or on bitter herbs. Aperol is a little bit lighter, has a little bit more orange flavor to it, and Campari is just a little bit more intense.
Got it. Jenna asks a great question. What are good starter cocktail crafting tools for someone who doesn't want to stock a whole bar or doesn't have space to buy them all?
Perfect. When you are creating your own little home bar, I would always recommend having a bottle of bitters. I usually go with the Angostura because those enter into most cocktails. Peychaud is only really used for about 2 or 3 classic cocktails. Angostura bitters are important because not only do they add a bittering agent, but they also bring out more flavor in fruit-forward drinks. Like if you've ever had a lemon drop martini, you know it has super amount of lemon to it and super bitter, super mouth-puckering. You add a little bit of Angostura to it and it totally lightens it out. From there, you want to have simple syrup. There are plenty of fantastic companies that do bottled simple syrups that you can find in Harris Teeter, Kroger, wherever you live. I would always recommend having a vodka, a bourbon, and if you like vermouth, have a bottle of sweet or dry vermouth, but please know that that is still wine, even though it does have some fortification to it. It will go bad in a few months. So if you have a bottle of, dry vermouth that you use once every other year, you want to get the smallest bottle possible. When you're looking for bartending tools, obviously, the best thing to do is have what we refer to as the Boston shaker, where it's the 2 metal tins together. If you can't afford that or you can't do that, the most important thing to get is this part, and you actually can get a pint glass, and you have what we refer to as a cheater tin. A cheater tin is basically just adding a glass to the other side of it. It's a little bit more dangerous because you're dealing with glass and shaking it back and forth. But other than that, it's the exact same thing. Or there is the classic shaker where you see the little screw top at the top of it. You'll see those in a lot of cocktail stores. We call that a cobbler shaker. And it's a lot easier to shake, a lot easier to maintain, but it doesn't shake the ice as well. If you are a fan of doing old fashions and drinks that you stir as opposed to shaking, if you want to invest in a Yamazaki glass, a mixing glass, I definitely recommend it. They're only about $20 or $30. Most of them are dishwasher safe, and they do a fantastic job of keeping a drink nice and cool, and also giving you a fantastic way to know when it's about to dilute too much. From there, any sort of strainer will do. Technically, they each have their own purpose. But unless you're doing some sort of cocktail competition, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But from there, just explore, try new things, buy, airline bottles, at your liquor store and see what tastes good. And then if you love it, buy the full bottle.
Great. Those are some great tips. Thank you. There's a couple quick substitution type questions. Is agave the same as simple syrup?
Really good question, especially going into the fall. So agave is going to be, agave syrup is using a sugar extracted from the actual agave plant. Agave plant is the basis for tequila. So the reason we use agave in tequila drinks is because we are mixing like with like. In the cocktail world, you love to have contrasting flavors in some places, bitter with lemon, sweet with sour. But the best thing that you can do when you're adding something to the actual spirit itself is to find things that are light and pair nicely. So agave works fantastic with tequila. I like to use refined sugars, the white sugars, for gin and for vodka. I will use the unrefined sugars, the turbinado and the demerara sugars for your rum and your bourbon, because similarly, they're a little unrefined, they're a little bit rougher. And honey goes fantastic with anything that is floral, because obviously you get those really nice floral aromatics from honey. So if you're ever looking to add a little extra, I'm trying to think of the right word besides saying floral again, but really floral notes to a drink, honey is always a fantastic add.
Great. Another one is for margaritas, do you personally use triple sec or Cointreau?
I use, Cointreau does exist. It is a triple sec. It is just a little bit of a higher end triple sec. I enjoy using Cointreau. I would also recommend Patron does a triple sec now, specifically created to go along with tequila. Cointreau is actually created by the French to pair with French brandy, to pair with cognac, and actually contains, it's a neutral grade and spirit based on grapes. So again, if you're trying to pair like with like, it is still fantastic, but regular triple sec will work if you're price conscious, or if you're really trying to make that crazy good margarita, try the Patron.
Excellent. Next, can I substitute whiskey with rum in spirit forward cocktails?
Yes. Awesome question. So, what was it, like 5-6 years ago, we saw the whiskey rush, where everybody loved whiskey, fell in love with whiskey. Everybody's making their own whiskey. We are about to see the exact same thing with rum. We just saw it with tequila, where even The Rock was making rum, or making tequila. Now we are seeing that happen with rum. Rum is basically just considered an incredibly heavy, unrefined, sugar-based spirit, and has some incredible aromatics to it when you get going with it. Now, if you are going to be doing a spirit-forward rum drink, do not use Goslings. It's way too harsh. You want to be using kind of your lighter style, you're using your aged rums, but not the black strap rums. So you're going to be using Ron Zacapa. You're going to be using Diplomatico. You're going to be using Rum Barbancourt again, if you're looking for something with a little bit of funk to it. Because all of the different rums have different styles of creation. Some are based on pure sugarcane juice. Some are based on molasses. Some are created specifically because they burnt the hell out of sugar and they didn't know what else to do with it besides make alcohol. And some are what we refer to as overproof. Do not make a cocktail with overproof rum. Overproof rum, if you ever see it, it's considered Bacardi 151 while they still made it. It's mostly made for chefs and bartenders to set things on fire. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not.
Just to clarify, my last question, can you just explain what a spirit forward drink means?
Definitely. So a spirit forward drink means a drink where whatever your base spirit is, your vodka, your gin, your rum, your tequila, is mainly what you're tasting, and everything else is just there as an ancillary or background character. Think about an old fashioned, where you are basically, you're just drinking bourbon with just a teeny tiny bit of sweetness to it. That's what we're referring to as a spirit forward drink. Whereas the pomegranate martini, the pomegranate and the honey and the lemon are supposed to be the main actors there, and they merely act as a vector for the vodka.
Interesting. Bill is interested to know if you have a drink using elderflower.
Yes, elderflower is a fantastic, fantastic drink. Again, if you are doing any sort of entertaining within reason during the holidays, I recommend as an aperitif doing an elder saint. So an elder saint is quite literally just a little bit of elderflower liqueur, top it off with sparkling and a teeny dash of gin, and you're beautiful. I would also recommend, again, using elderflower with gin wherever you can because they pair fantastically. I like to do a gimlet with elderflower, where I will do traditional gin gimlet is just an ounce of Rose's lime juice and 2 ounces of gin. I'll throw a half ounce, quarter ounce of elderflower in there, and it really brings another level to that drink.
Excellent, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of shifting gears slightly, if there was somebody, a student at PC, or, somebody looking for a career change, what would you recommend as steps to get into the alcohol profession?
Definitely. So yeah, when I basically, I fell into this world very luckily. I graduated PC with a degree in psychology, and I spent the next 3 years working in mental rehabilitation. And I burned out as quickly as anything in this world. I was miserable. I couldn't do it anymore, and I was really lost. And around that time, I needed a second job, so I started bartending. And it takes some time. You cut your teeth. When you see movies like Somm, or when you see even the movie Waiting is about as close to a documentary as anything that has ever existed in this life. You work your way through the restaurant industry to learn the ins and outs. You learn your profit loss margins. You learn the trends in the food world. And then from there, if you start, usually start off as a server, then you're promoted to a bartender. Then you become a manager. Then you usually want to become a bartender again because it's better money. And then you have the ability to move into what I do now, which is the sales side. So within the alcohol world, we are broken down into what we refer to as the 3-tier system, where the folks who make the alcohol, whether it be beer, wine, spirit, sake, has to sell it to a distributor who then sells it to bars and restaurants. And that is a way to keep the playing field even. If we did not have the 3-tier system, basically Budweiser would have every tap in the world because your local craft brewery does not have the manpower or the money to be able to do what they do. And that is basically the way I got into it was partially luck of the draw, and partially I had folks reach out to me and say, hey, you're a good bartender, but you always seem to want to talk more about wine and beer than you want to serve it. So maybe you would be really good at selling it. I hope that answers the question. And if folks want to really get in depth and talk about it, I'm happy to pass along my email. Getting into the bar industry was one of the most important things that I have ever done. I love it so much. I married one of my best bar regulars. It is a beautiful thing. Right now, it is incredibly tough. We went through probably the last 10 years is what we consider the golden age of restaurants, where nothing failed. And it is very much not that way right now. We have lost 100,000 out of 600,000 independent restaurants in the last 6 months. But these folks are resilient. If you ever think about Anthony Bourdain, he was a really tough guy, and everybody who worked alongside him and works in this industry is just as tough. And I'm excited to see what we do after this. So if anybody wants to join this side, it is a lot of fun.
That was gonna be my next question, is how the pandemic is affecting the bar industry, and what can we do to support that?
Basically, what I will say is, if there is any point in time where the phrase "use it or lose it" exists in our reality, this is it. October, November, and December, especially in colder states like New England, like Virginia, like Philadelphia, where I'm assuming most grads are right now, this is considered the time where you make your money to pay rent. Because in the spring and the summer, everybody goes out to the coast, everybody goes out to the mountains, and restaurants are usually quiet. This is when we make our money. And the way it works right now is that if, so for example, when I was laid off, when I was furloughed, I had a choice to not go back to my job, and I could just, do something else. I wouldn't have wanted to, but there was that option. But in the back of my mind, I remember the fact that a lot of your bartenders, your sommeliers, your chefs, we have quite literally trained ourselves. We've trained our taste buds, our bodies to make sure that we serve folks the best that we can, and we don't want to give up those skills. You would be surprised how many doctors, doctoral candidates, masters, folks with master's degrees, people who worked for the federal government I've seen move into this side because it's just more fun and we don't want to lose that. But for the folks who were given the chance to go back to restaurants when they reopened, if you said no, you lost your unemployment. And if you go back to work, again, you're still not eligible for unemployment, but you are not making nearly the money that you used to. So it is quite literally a catch-22. So please support your local restaurants as much as you can, within reason. Many bartenders and chefs I speak to are terrified to go into work because they know that it's dangerous, and they do it because they love it and because they need to. The best thing that we can do right now is to support takeout as much as possible and to do some research on the folks that you are using for takeout apps. The best thing that you can do is to call the restaurant directly, take out, tip 20%, see you later, bye. There are some delivery apps, DoorDash, for example, Toast, that are fantastic at making sure that the margins that they charge keep restaurants afloat. There are other delivery apps that I will not go into that don't, who basically will take 30% of a sale to, they basically take the finder's fee, about a 30%, 40% of an entree sale or a bottle of wine sale. And restaurant margins are very, very thin. In a restaurant, food usually loses money. You make money in a restaurant off of the alcohol. So that is the biggest thing that I would say is do delivery and make sure that you are paying attention to how you are doing delivery.
Great.
Okay, the soapbox now.
Well, we really do appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I will give you one last question since you started talking about restaurants and food. Any particular types of food that pair well with the drinks that you talked to us about tonight?
Pumpkin pie comes to mind. I would say that's fantastic. Apple is actually a fantastic pairing for pork. So, if you're doing a roast pig or pork tenderloin, be beautiful with that. Pernod and absinthe do really well with seafood, interestingly enough. So a Sazerac with fish tacos, something that usually has something fried with a little bit of oil to it to mask the alcohol, is perfect. Pomegranate martini, man, I really wish I could find something it wouldn't be beautiful with, but it would do fantastically with everything. I challenge you to find something it wouldn't work with. And then, of course, the mulled apple cider, s'more, or more pumpkin pie.
Great. Well, I feel like we have lots of different options now for our Thanksgiving dinner. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know that you've shared your email in the past to, for alums and friends to get in touch with you if they'd like to do this with their own friends or,
Yes.
get in touch with you.
So it's still going to be, it's going to be the zjodachow@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do these. I do these for fun. And just, to give back. So please, I'm more than happy to bother y'all on another night and just make ridiculous amounts of drinks in my kitchen.
Well, thank you again. I will be following up with everyone with the recipes for tonight's drinks, because I know lots of people had interest and have been messaging me on the side for the ingredients. So again, this was great and a great way to end our Homecoming at Home month of activity. So again, we really appreciate your time, and go Friars.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Mark.